Hello and welcome to the Avrum Rosensweig show, and more particularly to Parsha and Prose. And I'm here with my very dear friend, Rabbi Shlomo Gomorrah, the co-host of this show. How are you, Rabbi?
Thank you very much, Avrum. Very excited. It's our first podcast for this Jewish year.
Very nice. Yes. Yes. And what excites you about that?
You know, every year bring new opportunities, new resolutions, and especially after such a difficult year for all of us, all the Jewish people, all the Jewish world in the last year. I'm excited for whatever comes, and I hope that God listened to our tefillot and the tkiah
Amen.
of the shofar, and the Jewish people are going to enjoy a nice, good, healthy, peaceful year.
Amen. Chazak u'varuch. I want to ask you a question, Rabbi, which might be difficult to answer, but before this podcast started, you and I had a very nice schmooze. We always do. And you told me that you're very tired. And I hypothesized that the stress that we're under as a people is it's exhausting. It's tiring physically, and it creates, I think, an environment of us being weary. Can, can you explain the tiredness that you're going through and why you might be going through it?
I think it comes from many directions. First of all, I must say the tension of Yamim Noaim between Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur always put me on high, I wouldn't stress, but alert. Like you want really to use these days properly. And I wouldn't like to say that I feel a matadin. You might even think that I'm a tzaddik, which I'm not. But I do feel the seriousness of the days. So this put me under, as I said, like kind of alertness. Number one. Number two, just I'm addicted to the news from Israel. Although it looks like we turning the corner in our war against our enemies, every day brings terrible news. Someone is stabbed here, someone is wounded, if not killed there. This takes a great toll on me. I'll be honest with you. Um, Add like the pressures in work, and you get the answer.
Rabbi, what does the Torah say about the sadness after the fall of the temples?
Um, I will share with our listeners and with you something that I say this week in the one of our assemblies to for October 7th, and we had very powerful assemblies here in Chad. And I spoke about the famous story of the five rabbis who are walking on the outskirts of Jerusalem, and they arrive actually to the Temple Mount, and they see a fox uh, coming from the holiest place, the Kodesh HaKodashim, Holy of Holiest, the place that actually is the center of the work of the high priest in Yom Kippur that we are going to celebrate in 2 3 days. And they see this site of destruction and the most beautiful place on earth that they remember themselves. They saw it, and they all cry. They all cry, except of one person, Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Akiva is smiling, and they thought maybe he's out of his mind because really, like everyone is like thinking about someone who is walking through a concentration camp, like smiling and not affected by the place. And he said, "I'll tell you what I think. Um, you know, I'm smiling because now I'm sure that we are going to be redeemed." Because there are prophecies about the destruction. If they were fulfilled, the prophecies about our redemption will be also fulfilled. So, what for you, the Khurban, you see now the destruction, the present, I already see the future. Now, think about it. These are five scholars, Four of them are engulfed in their pain, in their grief, and this is apparently the normal reaction to a tragedy. You cry, you don't know what is going to happen, you are not sure about the future. This feeling that you are hanged, you are not really on a solid ground. But you need one person to manage to fly up and to see things on the bigger picture, as we say, to see a hope where it seems that there is no one, or no reason for hope. And I shared this story with my students, and I said, obviously, we all under the trauma of October 7th. You will never be able to bring back someone who was brutally killed in October 7th and afterwards. But the Jewish people are experts of hope. Experts of hope. We know that even though one eye is tearing and we are crying most of the time, the other eye watch forward. We are seeing the future, and the future must be good. If we think about the situation of the Jewish people 200 years ago, pogroms, crusaders, Holocaust, Spain, every piece of our history, who could believe that, 9 million people will live in the land of Israel? And in a very short time, people will come from all over the globe to sit there. So with all the terrible tragedy that happened, I think we must keep hope and we must look to the future that must be much brighter than what we see right now.
Have you always had a strong belief and faith in God?
Yes. And learning the Bible is a source for it. You know what? Intellectually, I can understand people who will tell you there is God, there is no God. I can see the points here and there. I heard atheists, and all have great points. My God is first of all the God of history. I am completely see myself as a product of Jewish history and the person who have a very strong sense and feeling of Jewish history. I don't see myself as Rabbi Shlomo Gemara. I really see myself as the descendant of my parents, my grandparents, my great grandparents, up to Aaron a Cohen. I'm a Cohen. Most likely, I came from. I'm a descendant of him. I do have a very, very strong feeling of history and my part in this Jewish history, which I'm extremely proud of. And seeing all the trouble that the Jewish people went through, but where we are today, for me, it's most likely the best proof that God exists and keep the Jewish people.
Does the Ribbono Shel Olam, does God, does the Almighty, have his hand in everything that happens?
In my opinion, absolutely yes. You just have to see it. I think that once I told you, and I tell my students the following. There is a kind of art that you look in a picture and you see many, many spots of color, different color. You cannot see anything. But if you train your eyes, it's called 3D illusions or something like this. And diagrams, I can't remember even the name. If you train your eyes to look in a certain angle, you can see actually a 3D popping from the paper. Do you have anything like this at home? This kind of, you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, I'm an artist. I've studied many different types of art. So yes.
Uh-huh. So this is a very unique one because apparently it's computerized, but really, once you train your eye, you can see a dinosaur, you can see a horse, depending on what the artist painted inside. And it's amazing because a second before you didn't see anything, and here you see something quite perfect and beautiful. And I always tell my students, look at the world. The world is like this piece of art. You don't see God. But if you train your heart and mind, it will pop up. It will pop up. You will see God in your life. And that's a feeling that I feel many, many times. I can see when I walk, when I talk to people, when I reflect on what happened to me, even on one day, I see like sometimes the hand of God more clearly. Sometimes I can see the tapping, the gentle, on my
The pat on
shoulder.
the back. Yeah, the pat.
Yeah, I can see that. I can feel that.
Do you talk with God?
Um, sometimes, sometimes, but I'm not persevere. I don't want to give the wrong impression here. But I think a lot about God. Absolutely, yes.
And in your davening, is it a discussion with God?
I try. I'll be completely honest with you. Many, many times I wake up in Moedim and they say, well, wait a second, what happened here in the last 2 minutes? Because I did not form. And sometimes I have this kind of frustration. To be honest with you, I'm always honest with you. Sometimes I would say like this: I do believe that davening is not important for the davening itself as much as like what kind of person you are after davening. Are you a person that really appreciate God in your life, yes or not? And sometimes I end the davening, I put my tefillin, I say the Shema, I say the Shmona Esrei, and I don't have this feeling that I met God in the last half an hour. I have days like this too, and I don't want to lie to you or to anyone who hear us. There are days like this, but I would say that on those days of Aseret Yemei Tshuva, sometimes on Rosh Hashanah, on Yom Kippur, I feel more the connection between me and God.
Have you seen Nisim in your life? Miracles in your personal life?
Um, there is one which is unbelievable, but I'm not sure that I want to share it with the listeners. Many of them know about it. I will just say that I'm not sure that my son, my youngest son, who was born in Toronto, would love to mention it, but I would say very shortly. When we came to Toronto in the end of '93, my wife gave birth on Pesach of '94. And this was, I believe, the 25th week of the pregnancy. So my son was born 680 grams. And the doctor's prediction was very, very poor in many, many ways. To make a long story short, I would say today the data scientist, very capable person, um, healthy. Um, and you know what? When I say a miracle, it's not me. It's a non-Jewish doctor, and the doctors were fantastic. His name was Dr. Kelly. Maybe many people know him from Mount Sinai. I asked him how it all changed, like against your prediction. So he said to me, there is one factor that we did not take into account: God factor.
Yeah, yeah. Baruch Hashem. Wow, we're gonna have to talk about your kids one day. You know that.
This is, you know, my little one is now 30 years old, so they are. I cannot talk about them anymore. They can talk very, very well for themselves.
No, no, we have to hear more about your family. You can ask me about my son too. You don't ask me. Okay. The show is sponsored by the Professional Center, and I want to tell you a little bit about it. It's Toronto leading co-working space where excellence is the norm. From private sunlit offices to fully equipped meeting rooms, their spaces are designed to allow you to focus and get to work. At TPC, they combine high-end amenities with unparalleled services, ensuring your office experience meets the highest standards. Discover why TPC offers more sophistication, more privacy, and more opportunities to grow. For more information, visit theprofessionalcenter.com. And if you mention my name, Avrum, you get 10% off private offices and meeting rooms. And I just want to take a moment to show you their offices. They are very elegant, as you could see, very modern, and well worth looking at. You can find them at theprofessionalcenter.com, which again you can see at the bottom of my screen. Now, ladies and gentlemen, the series is called Parsha Prose, and thank God we've been doing it for a few months now, and I think we're on a roll. We're doing quite well. This week is the final Parsha in the Torah, and it is called V'zot HaBerachah. We are doing that through the lens of a book called Lord of the Rings, The Return of the King. Let me just tell you a little bit about both, okay? V'zot HaBerachah is the final portion of the Torah, and it marks a poignant conclusion to the sacred narrative of the 5 books of Moses. In this Parsha, in this portion, we witness the closing moments of Moses' life as he bestows blessings upon the tribes of Israel before his passing. It serves not only as a farewell from the beloved leader, but also as a powerful reminder of the value, the hopes, and aspirations that he imparted throughout their journey. The blessings he offers are rich with symbolism, reflecting the unique qualities of each tribe and emphasizing the unity and the diversity within the Israelite community. As we explore V'zot HaBerachah, we're invited to reflect on themes of leadership, of legacy, and enduring covenant between God and the people of Israel, making it a fitting end to the Torah's profound teachings. Now, The Lord of the Rings, The Return of the King. It is the climactic finale of J.R.R. Tolkien's epic trilogy, and it brings the long and perilous journey of Middle-earth's heroes to a breathtaking conclusion. As the forces of good and evil prepare for their ultimate confrontation, the stakes have never been higher. Frodo and Sam inch closer to Mount Doom, burdened by the weight of the One Ring and the darkness that seeks to consume them. Meanwhile, Aragorn must embrace his destiny as a king, uniting the free people of the Middle-earth against the looming threat of Sauron. In this rich tapestry of courage, sacrifice, and friendship, themes of hope and redemption resonate deeply. As alliances are forged and battles waged, Tolkien weaves a narrative that explores the complexity of power and the enduring struggle between light and darkness. The Return of the King not only concludes the saga of the ring, but it also invites readers to reflect on the nature of heroism and bonds that connect all of us, making it a timeless tale of adventure and heart. Rabbi, why did you bring these two together?
Isn't it almost the same? Like, think about the main themes of Lord of the Ring and the Torah here. Let's talk about like endings, transitions. We are exactly at the parsha that we are about to end the life of Moshe Rabbeinu, who started all this forming a nation, and transition, moving not to Middle Earth, Tolkien ended, but to Eretz Israel, to the land that they dreamed about for 40 years after a very long journey, and not a simple one, not a simple one. Exactly like the journey with the ring to Mount Doom. Leadership, legacy, like it's so beautiful that many times I tell you I think that they took the whole story like from the Tanakh, but in this case is almost so clear that
But by
this
the way, do
thing.
you really believe that when you say that? Do you really believe it? many novels.
I'll tell you what. In the beginning, I believed with it wholeheartedly, but then, the more I think about it, great literature is dealing with our lives, and the themes of our life are a theme that the Torah cared about. Our sages have a beautiful expression. Dibra Torah bilshon bnei adam. The Torah speaks the language of human beings. Because although the Torah comes from a very holy place, but it deals with us, with people who are not so holy. The Torah tried to inspire us to be holier. So the issues that you find in Lord of the Ring of good and evil, friendship, sacrificing for achieving your goals, leadership, they are common themes to human beings wherever they are. So it might well be that a great author could see it and it had a great impression on him, and maybe he never saw it in the Torah itself. But many, many times I can see lots of connections between the figures in the Torah and Lord of the Ring as one example. But in every great piece of literature, as we saw already, really great literature dealing with the great themes of life, and the Torah is dealing with every single theme. You will not be able to think about a theme that the Torah was not talking about, which I see like as an amazing thing. The Torah really encompasses everything that we have in our life. Everything.
Rabbi, this is the very last book in the series, Lord of the Ring, right?
Yeah.
So it's done. It's finished. And she doesn't claim to be writing any more books on this, right?
I think it's over. When I think the last one was written when, in the mid-50s or something?
Yeah, it's been a while. But the Torah, the final portion in the Torah, is it connected to Bereshit? Is it part of the cycle is it more like a circle than a definite stop?
First of all, we should see that what happened in Simchat Torah, when we read V'zot HaBerachah, we start right away Bereshit. So it must be connected, and I'll tell you what I think is the connection. I don't think that just we try to start and to repeat it again. The beginning of Bereshit is a story about a perfect place, Gan Eden, paradise. And because of humans, somehow this paradise could not exist for too long. They were expelled. Adam and Eve were expelled from the paradise because what they did. Now, maybe when we are going to touch upon Bereshit, we will talk about this issue, which I find maybe the most important parsha in the Torah for any human being. The journey to the land of Israel is a return to paradise, maybe slightly different from what God prepared with no human involvement, because when the first human being was in paradise, God prepared for him everything, from the water, from the trees, everything was ready to serve him. The return for Eretz Israel, as described many, many times in the book of Devarim, is very much like paradise. Water everywhere, fruits, zabat chalav udvash, milk and honey. This is a description of paradise, no less. But this time, human beings, or more particularly the Jewish people, are going to settle this paradise and to build this paradise and to be partners of God in this paradise. So I think that putting V'zot HaBerachah and Bereshit together is much more than just repeating a second cycle. Is closing the cycle that started in Bereshit in paradise just before they crossed the Jordan into paradise.
Oh, it's fascinating. I love that. Before we dive into sort of the comparison that we do between the Parsha and the novel or the writings that we choose, just a couple of questions about Moshe Rabbeinu himself. We find throughout history that great leaders die. Napoleon, right? Winston Churchill. They pass away. That's the end of their life. It's finished. Yet, when you study the Torah, when you study Moshe Rabbeinu, our teacher, his death this week in this parsha, never was there another prophet like Moshe Rabbeinu. His eyes never dimmed. Somehow, I get the distinct impression that he is really not dying to us. That it's as though that energy is forever. Yet he's a human being. He's a man. He's called a man. What's your take on the ending, the last days of Moshe Rabbeinu?
I think that we spoke about it last time, and I told you my personal grief, how a hero like him ends his life lonely. A
Yeah.
person who led millions of people, the end of his life, to me, it's like really like I cry when I read the story about the disappearance of Moshe Rabbeinu. And again, so lonely. The loneliness somehow break my heart. Um, that's on one hand. And the second hand, on the second hand, you're right. There is no clear idea that Moshe Rabbeinu days are completely over. He was buried. No one knows where he was buried. Unlike most people, most leaders who are buried and then their graves turning to be a mausoleum and a place for pilgrimage. No, there is no pilgrimage because in a certain way, Moshe Rabbeinu continued to teach us. Moshe Rabbeinu continued to be for us the highest degree of leadership. Moshe Rabbeinu for us is still our Rebbe in many, many ways. And I think that Torah want to give this dichotomy as a person he died, as a leader, as a person who shaped the Jewish people. He never died and will never die. And to me, it's a very powerful thing to know that Moshe Rabbeinu is going to be reborn about 3 months
Yeah.
later when
Yeah.
we are going to read, that there was a baby who was born in
Yeah.
Egypt and so on and so on. So there is a Tchiyat Metim here in a sense because his life continued to teach us from the moment he was born until the moment he passed away or disappeared from our communal life. He's still there somewhere. Sometimes, in the winter time, we, like many things, we look at the trees. They are bare, they are naked, but there is a reborn tree after a few months. Moshe Rabbeinu is going to appear again, and we are going to talk about it many, many times in our podcasts.
I often ask people the question is, may have asked you should live a long life till 120, but when your days are over and you go up to Shemayim, and let's say that it is the way we think it might be, who knows? Like, who is an individual that you'd really like to sit and talk with? And I'll be honest with you, my first is Moshe Rabbeinu,
I think for many.
right? For many, yeah.
I think for many people, for different reasons. But there is no question that if you take the figures that are responsible for us as Jewish people, I think that Moshe Rabbeinu is number one.
We have a question that you would ask Moshe Rabbeinu?
As a very small leader, I would ask him how he managed to survive
Yeah.
his leadership. um, eh, it's not easy to be a leader in general. It's impossible to be a Jewish leader because and the nice thing about it, I want to to say what is nice about it. Um, the Jewish people, everyone is a leader. And actually, when God created the Jewish people, He created every one of us to be a leader. But we know that when two leaders are coming together, most likely there will be sparks and some clash between them because each one has his own opinion. And I always saw the idea of machloket that is prominent in the Jewish community, um, because you cannot go anywhere in the world, in the Jewish world, you cannot go to any area in Jewish history that there was no machloket. How is that possible? And the biggest question is, well, if they always fight with each other, how they survived? Because normally you would expect people to be united, not in order to survive their enemies. And our enemies were magnificent. They were empires. They were very powerful people. How we survive with all these machloket? I would say that you have to understand where the machloket, the disputes come from. It because every Jew is a great person. Every Jew has qualities of leadership. And sometimes when, as I said, when leaders come into one room, each one want to show his opinion and is very, every Jew is very opinionated and and feel inside him that the emes, the truth is with him and with no other one. And I think that this quality that we know inside us that we are leaders help us at the end of the day to survive. Because every Jew knew I cannot rely on Moshe Rabbeinu or on the greatest scholar of the generation, on Rabbi Akiva, on the Rambam, whoever it is. I have to do my part and I can do my part. And I think if we look into the roots of this characteristic of the Jewish people, the dispute, the never-ending dispute, it's actually show the greatness of the Jewish people. We don't like it when it happened, but when we reflect upon it, I think we have to appreciate it. It comes because every Jew is a great person, and he had a mission, and he tried to stick to his mission or her mission. And normally, as I say, disputes will raise from two great people coming together.
Are you ever hesitant about saying every Jew is a great person?
Potentially, I don't hesitate, not at all. I do think that every Jew is a great person. But listen, what we do with our potential is something different. And you know what? One of the beautiful quotes that I love from Lord of the Ring, and I think it's something to learn it. It's really like a shtickle muser. So Frodo says in one point, I wish it need not have happened in my time.
Mhm.
So Gandalf, which is his, the sage, the wider person, to me it's like maybe like Aaron, a Cohen. If Frodo is Moshe Rabbeinu, then Gandalf is kind of the Cohen Gadol. So he said, and so do all who live to see such times. But that is not for them to decide. All we have to decide is what to do with the time that is given us. And I think it's such a beautiful quote which really summarizes the Torah because we never know where we are going to be, who is going to be around us, what are going to be the circumstances of our life, the conditions of our life. The only question, and this is true about all human beings, but especially about the Jewish people, is okay, we are in a certain situation. What are we doing with it? What are we doing with it? And I feel that the entire Torah and the rabbinics and the rabbis tried all the time to tell us, you have a mission. We will try to teach you what can you do and what you should do with the gift that is called life.
Rabbi, when you were raising your children, let's say one of your children threw something over into the neighbor's lawn and it wasn't good. He wasn't happy about it. He shouldn't have done it. So you tell your child you can't do that. Maybe you'll punish your child. And then 2 weeks later, when something comes up, maybe you'll bring it up again. You remember 2 weeks ago you did that? 3 weeks, something else happens. The kid's rambunctious. Maybe you'll mention it. Maybe you'll stop. Where I'm leading to is I can't understand why, even at the very end of the Torah, there's a pasuk, and it reads as follows: And Hashem said to Moshe Rabbeinu, to him, "This is the land which I swore to Abraham, to Isaac, and to Jacob, saying, I will give it to your offspring. I have let you see it with your own eyes, but you shall not cross over to there." It, God must have said this to Moshe Rabbeinu 4 or 5 times. Why does he keep reminding him?
That's a great question. And since our listeners should know that we don't prepare the question together,
No, we
they
don't.
should know that all our discussions are very spontaneous. And I must say, this is something that I need to think about. Um, because it looks like to stop someone and to like to make it even more painful. You see the land, but you
Exactly.
will never get there. That's how we might treat it. Or I would say, like, in a childish reading, I would say, okay, you are not going into the land, but I will give you like second place. You are going to see it from afar, and this is going to be your reward. Our sages took this pasuk and they say that what God told Moshe Rabbeinu to do is to go to the forefathers, Abraham, Yitzchak, and Jacob, and to tell them, guys, God promised you that He will bring your children back to the land. I give in front of you. I witness that indeed God fulfilled this promise, and you are going. Your children are going to cross the Jordan. Um, that's why that's the midrash. This is a midrash, obviously, that wondered why Hashem now, like, teaching the Jewish history to Moshe Rabbeinu that it's the land of Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov. It was with a purpose. So the midrash comes and say Hashem told him to go to the forefathers and to tell them that He fulfilled this promise. Um, but it looks more than that. And you know what? It's good that you left me with a question. I will think a little bit about it. Maybe.
All right. Well, just a part B here before we go into our novel and our parsha more so. If we go on the premise that what Hakadosh Baruch Hu was saying to Moshe Rabbeinu, that what God was saying to Moshe Rabbeinu, here it is, and was promised to Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, but you can't go into it. Let's go on the premise for a second that what Hakadosh Baruch Hu was saying to Moshe was the most positive thing, was almost a blessing. Let's say at the end of the Torah, God decided He's going to bless Moshe Rabbeinu. Never was there a prophet like Moshe Rabbeinu. And here's part of the blessing: and you will not enter into Eretz Yisrael. Can you take that thought and turn it into something?
Um, I'll tell you how I understand it, because this is really such a cruel punishment or step. Moshe Rabbeinu did so much for the Jewish people. Why Hashem cared for 1 year, for 1 month, just to let him cross the Jordan and to be with the Jewish people?
But is it a punishment, though, Rabbi? Maybe it's not.
That's exactly the direction I want to lead. We It sounds from the Torah when you read the psukim that it was a punishment, but the Torah is not a great, and it might be surprising, but the Torah is not so much about punishments. I think the Torah is much more about consequences. Taking people from Beit Avadim, from a house of slaves, in a journey of 40 years in the desert, requires set of skills which is unique, to bond them together, to educate them. After all, they never went to yeshiva or went to a school. This is a nation of slaves. And we can see throughout the Torah, these people could never leave the mentality of slavery. That's why they had to retrain themselves 40 years in the desert. And now they're coming to the land of Israel, which requires very different set of skills, wars, um, conquering the land, um, working the land. The manna is not going to come anymore from heaven. God is not going to be in their presence. You need a very different kind of leadership. And I think what Hashem is telling Moshe Rabbeinu is say, Moshe, you were the perfect leader. I could not choose anybody who is greater than you to lead the people from Egypt, giving them the Torah, carry them for 40 years in the desert, there, bringing them to the land of Israel. Because you are such a great leader, and because you were perfect for this term of leadership, we must now find a new leader that is capable of dealing with the new challenges. So I guess that every departure of leader is very, very painful for the leader himself, for the people who are following him and used to him. But the Torah here is teaching us something very fundamental. Leadership is not about the leader. Leadership is about the people the leader leads. And sometimes for the people, you have to change the leadership. You have to change the leader. And that's exactly what is happening here. And again, if we think about the story, about the books we read, we have something very similar. You know, carrying the ring with all the sacrifice and the burden it brings. And he, like the description is so beautiful and reminds us many, many times the struggles of Moshe Rabbeinu himself with the nation. At a certain point, it had to end, and the leader has to depart, and to give it over to the king. And yeah, so in this term, I think that there is a message of hope in the Torah. If we try to see the bigger picture, the Jewish people had a great leader. They are about to start a new term in their history. They need a new leadership.
Yeah. And I think because Moshe Rabbeinu loved God with all his heart and loved Eretz Yisrael, that perhaps he had the wherewithal, Rabbi, to see that what God was bestowing upon him, his inability to go into Israel, perhaps he saw that in a very positive light. Perhaps he was able to say, thank God I'm not going in, because if I were to go in, Eretz Yisrael would not be the magnificent gem that it's meant to be. And there's another thing too. I don't know if it's a Midrash or a Rashi somewhere. I remember learning that God said to Moshe Rabbeinu, he said, Hazar, listen, my child, don't worry about not going to Israel, because what I have in Olam Haba for you is far greater.
You know, it's interesting that you say that, because there is another midrash which align with the idea that I just expressed a few seconds ago. It says that when Moshe Rabbeinu put pressure on God, I want to go into the land, I want to go into the land, he even came with a deal, with a package deal. He said, you know what, you don't want me to be the leader? No problem. Joshua, my student, is going to be the leader. I am going to be a student. And we all know that Moshe Rabbeinu was a humble person, the most humble person ever. Can you think about a person who speaks with God and the next day is speaking with Avrum in the marketplace? He was the most humble person, and he could do it. And the Midrash is telling us that God said, "Well, that's a great idea, actually. Let's try it one day." And for one day,
Yeah.
Hashem appointed Yoshua to be the leader, and Moshe Rabbeinu was a student. After a short time, Moshe Rabbeinu came back to God. And this is a midrash, it's not a joke. He came to God and he said to him, Elef mitot velo kin'a achat, 1,000 death, and not one envy or jealousy, which tell you that Moshe Rabbeinu was Ish Elokim. He was a person influenced by the divine, but he was a person. And every leader knows what happened when he see a CEO leave his job, he had a great party, he sees someone new coming, it's a very difficult feeling. And Hashem actually saved Moshe Rabbeinu from seeing the leadership of others and beating himself and jealous of the leadership. Sometimes, in other words, this midrash is telling us sometimes it's good to die and not to see what is happening after you, because you are not able to deal with it.
Okay, good. How do Moses' blessings in V'zot HaBerachah reflect his legacy as a leader, and how does Aragorn's acceptance of his kingship in the Return of the King highlight the responsibilities of true leadership?
I think the answer is very much in the question itself. And I would say the following: the greatest moment of a leader is when he spread his qualities, which is actually the meaning of bracha, to his followers. I can tell you my greatest moment of a father is going to be in 2 days. Every Erev Yom Kippur, I give, or personally, or through the phone, Birkat Abanim to my children on Erev Yom Kippur.
What is that, Birkat Abanim? What is it?
Birkat Abanim is a blessing for the children. Many people are doing it in a short version every Shabbos, but on the eve of Yom Kippur, there is a beautiful beracha that every father gives to his children for the coming year, for Yom Kippur. Sometimes I cry through the blessing. Sometimes I'm a little bit more cool. But my fatherhood, I could squeeze it to those seconds where I give everything in my heart, mind, and soul to my children. And I think that Moshe Rabbeinu most probably felt even, I'm sure, much more than I am as a father, giving every bit of himself to the Jewish people, give them this blessing. And what is the blessing? The blessing is actually giving you the blessing that you will take your responsibilities seriously, that God will give you the tools to fulfill your responsibilities. That's the way I see it. Because at the end of the day, what we say, for example, in the bracha, Raglecha yarutzu lasot mitzvot. Your legs are going to run to do mitzvot. So it's not that you tell him that you are going to be blessed by God by doing nothing. No, you will have to run to do the mitzvot. But God is going to give you the health, the desire, the ambition, the tools to go and to do this mitzvot. And the return of the king is something quite similar. Once a king understands that, first of all, he is responsible to his duties and to his people, this is the greatest bracha. This is the greatest thing that actually characterizes the king. Because a king, and again, this idea is highlighted in Lord of the Ring, you have responsibility that you have to carry. And you cannot, although it's very tempting not to do it and not to take upon yourself the mission, our life is about standing the mission that is bestowed on us. And for a king, he is actually a servant of the people that he is ruling. And this is the greatest bracha. So something that from the side might be, oh, this is a curse. You have to carry this like duty and these jobs. And no. This is a real bracha.
Do you know the blessing that you give your children by heart?
It's quite long. I think I could.
Do you know any of it? Maybe the first few lines?
Yeah, I will share with you the first few lines. יהי רצון מלפניך, השם אלוקינו ואלוקי אבותינו. It should be your will, our God and the God of our fathers. שייתן בלבך, that he will put in your heart, אהבתו ויראתו, the love of him and the fear of him. לעשות רצונו, to do his will. רגליך ירוצו לעשות מצוות, like your legs should run to fulfill as many mitzvot as you can. לבך יהגה עימות. Your heart is going to be full with um, um, emotions or feeling towards God, and so on and so on. And you end it obviously with תיכתב ותיחתם לחיים טובים. Everyone can find it on the Siddur. I'm sure that today in the Google time you say ברכת הבנים, the nosach, you will get it. I think it's one of the most inspiring moments in a life of a parent when he can give it over to his children.
At that point, do you feel like a whole partner with God in the creation of
Absolutely.
your children?
Yes. Yes, absolutely yes. I gave you just one starking example with my little one. Certainly, like, okay, he was in the hands of God. We drove to the hospital every single night to see how is he doing in the incubator, and to be with the doctors. And it was time, today people wouldn't believe it, but today my English is okay. At the time, I barely could speak English. It's on one end, I don't want to remember this time. At the same time, I remember it every single day of my life. Like
Yes.
how
Yes.
Hashem really helped us in an impossible situation. We didn't have the family to support us. We never wanted to tell the other children how serious is the situation. Because every time that we went home, we weren't sure that we will go back to the hospital tomorrow to see our child. Yeah. Uh,
Rabbi,
so I do feel the partnership with God. Absolutely, yes.
I interviewed a person today, and her son, his name is Ness, miracle. And I said, "Did a nace happen when your child was born?" She said, "The nace was that he was born, that I held him in my stomach, that I was able to give birth. That was the miracle."
That's a very profound answer, because
Beautiful.
if we really think about what is happening in the process of pregnancy,
Yeah.
wow, I
Yeah.
think really it's one of the opportunities to see God firsthand.
Well,
And it's interesting. I always think why God gave this privilege only to women, to carry it, because I think they can feel actually the presence of God much more than the males. So
you think
Hashem
so?
gave it. I'm sure 100% about it. There is one bracha every day that women say, Orthodox women say, and they say like the male says, Baruch atah Hashem Elokeinu melech haolam shelo asani isha, which sounds like, oh, thank you God that you didn't make me a woman.
Yeah.
And women say, Baruch she'asani kirtzono, which sounds,
Right.
okay, you did me a woman. Okay, fine, I'll take it. What can I do? But really, um, I think that there is a very profound, and I think I heard it by the name of Rabbi Cook, which I think is very, very true. Shasani Kirtzono, he made me like his will, is not like, okay, he made me like woman, I will accept it. No, Asani Kirtzono, he made me according to his will, because me and his will align together. And you can see it around you. I can see it every day. Women are much more religious than men. Period. Period. In my life, I saw it again and again. Women, by nature, are closer to God. Um, and when we say Shelo Asani Isha, that might be other reasons. After all, it's especially in old times. Being a woman was a very dangerous thing, because many of them died at the time of birth. And you thank God for not putting you in this kind of danger. But Shasani Kirtono is not like, okay, acceptance. It's actually definition of what women are. They are closer to God. They are more aligned with the will of God.
Wow. I'm going to write this down after this show because I want to spend some time on that point. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
What is your experience? You didn't feel this way? I remember your mother. She was a religious woman. I maybe davened, but she was inspired by it. She was really inspired by it.
well,
Um,
I'm just not clear what you're saying, but thank you for those kind words. I'm just not clear what you're saying, and I realize it's going to take some discussion. When I watch men who do things lishma in the name of God, who have kavanah, who have intention when they pray, when they do the mitzvot, even lulav and Esther, they close their eyes and they're there with one with God. And then I think about women and doing their mitzvot, and I see wonderful women in my life who are so committed to Judaism and God, and I'm trying to figure out the distinction is that you're making. I can't quite see it.
So maybe we should talk about the idea of religiosity. What does that exactly mean? Does it mean to follow rituals? I never understood it this way. I think that the rituals come to bring something from within us that will inspire us. That's for me religiosity is. It's not just following certain rituals and doing certain deeds. Is living with God.
Mhm.
And I must tell you, even this year, I see how many women just organize themselves to say Tehillim and to go from one place to another to create chesed. From my little place, it sounds much more, and this, how sincere it is. How sincere it is. It comes from such a deep point. I am so impressed with it. And I have to tell you, I think that men, I don't want to take anything from them. I'm, after all, one of them. But the sincerity and the feeling God is with me, I can see it with women much more than men. You might disagree with me. It's fine.
I, I'm not disagreeing. I just don't understand what you're saying.
Yeah,
You're speaking it very emotionally, and I get. I see the construct that you're developing. I'm just thinking about the people I know who are very, very righteous, a man and a woman, and they both seem extraordinarily connected to God. So I'm not quite sure where you're coming from.
I'm sure that there are people like this, but I do feel, and again, I would argue that that's why God gave women to have this temple for 9 months for their children,
Mhm.
and I call it a temple. In Hebrew, there is a beautiful word, rechem, and if you think about rachamim, like it's a kindness, it's like enveloping you.
Mhm.
Um, I think because they are more capable of feeling the closeness of God. That's my
Okay.
feeling.
Okay. You don't mind if we pick up on this at some point, huh?
Absolutely. Maybe we
Rabbi,
have to bring a woman to this discussion now, how she feels about it.
yeah, no, I've been thinking about that. It's a good idea. In V'zot HaBerachah, Moses addresses each tribe individually, which is very interesting that happens in the final Parsha, celebrating their unique qualities. How does the fellowship and the return of the king embody unity amidst diversity in their fight against Sauron?
First of all, let me ask you, Soren reminds you anyone from the Torah, by the way?
Who?
What figure will come into your mind when you read about him, like his leadership style? And
It's a good question. Nothing comes to mind.
wouldn't you say that it's kind of Paro, kind of
Okay. Okay.
yeah? That's the one came into my mind at least. Um, and the leadership, listen, it's very very interesting that. Um, you have people like Gandalf, which, as I said before, if you want to compare him to someone in the Torah, a wise person, guiding figure, um, it reminds me Aaron and Moshe Rabbeinu with all his greatness and divine direction could not handle it without Yitro, without Aaron, without the Zekanim that Hashem gave him, to teach you that leadership indeed is something that require people around you. And I think the Lord of the Ring, exactly as I said, if you take Samwise, to me is like Caleb, a person who said, "We can make it. You should continue with the journey. You can do it. Yes, it's very very hard. Yes, the challenges are ahead of us, and the unity. Yes, everyone is different. The hobbits, the humans, but." in order to achieve something, especially in a long journey that requires sacrifice, you must friends and friendship around you. So this is another point that I think connect our Torah with the themes of Lord of the Rings.
You know, you bring up a really interesting thought here. It's the correlation between one character to another. So I'm going to throw a few characters from Lord of the Rings out to you, and you tell me who they remind you of in the Torah.
I will start. Golem. And think about the word. When I say that sometimes I feel that
Word.
these people knew a lot about, our Bible. Think about the golem, this
No,
golem. Like, what kind of person he reminds you?
he was the former ring bearer, and he was obsessed with the ring.
Yeah, and power. And, the interesting thing, he's characterized by a person who gave up, who gave up um, a, his qualities for seeking power. And I cannot think about any other one who did exactly that than Asaph, who gave up his Bechorah.
Uh,
Some people um, will give up the most precious things for temporary achievements,
yes.
that and eventually this caused their tragic downfall, like Golem. And but go ahead if you have more people.
Frodo Baggins, the Hobbit tasked with destroying the One Ring.
No question, this is like Moshe Rabbeinu. This he the leader. And again, so many things that happening along the journey are clearly like Moshe Rabbeinu.
Samwise Gamgee, Frodo's loyal friend and companion.
Um, as I said, I think this is a Caleb, the person who you need next to you in order to inspire you, to give you faith, despite all the difficulties. It might be also sometimes Aaron himself, a person who share with you some of your responsibilities and your divine mission. But to me, it strikes or like Joshua, Caleb, the people who have it within them to face challenges and to deal with them properly.
Aragorn, the heir to the throne of Gondor and a key leader in the fight against Sauron.
Maybe Joshua. He's an interesting character with no question, because he represents the continuation, like not the main bulk of the books. Did you think about someone?
No, but I think that makes sense what you're saying.
Legolas. I would say someone like Pinchas. This zealousness, this kind of determination, the ability to do things beyond expectations, like with in lack of leadership. So again, I don't want to say, Avrum, I don't want to say that he took, like, he went over the Tanakh and took like characters and disguised them with his characters. In a great journey, you will have these people. And it might be a very different story. This is more kind of a fantasy, obviously. But in every great journey, you have this kind of challenges, people that will help you, people that you will have to fight against. And I think this is the beauty of literature. Literature, even though it's fantasy and everyone knows that it's not true, sometimes it's easier to identify with the themes of great literature rather than the short verses in the Torah. Sometimes and that's what happened to me many times, because I'm quite familiar with many great books and great pieces of literature. When I read the Torah, sometimes I get a much more profound and stronger feelings to the story, because it sounds to me, wait a second, I think I know. I read once about the dynamics of this story. Okay, the names were different, the scenes were different, but the struggles, the challenges are exactly the same. And you know what? 2 weeks ago, one of my good friend, Norman Winter, showed me a beautiful piece of Rav Lichtenstein, who was a very well-known Rosh Hashiva and a huge, huge Talmid Chacham. And he got his PhD, I believe, from Harvard in English literature. So just think about this person who was one hand son-in-law of Rabbi Soloveitchik, a great Torah scholar. He left after him. He passed away, I think, about 5 years ago. And many of profound sefarim in the style of brisk, because he was a real brisker, and at the same time, a person who hold PhD in English literature from Harvard. It's quite an interesting combination, isn't it? And he writes about the point that I made. I was so like elated, like I was elevated when I read the line that he gave me. He's one of our listeners, by the way, and he showed it to me. How we say that indeed great literature can help even Talmidei Chachamim to understand better the Torah and to be a better Jew. And for me, it was like such a great treasure to read, because I always believed it. And to hear it from someone on the caliber of Rav Lichtenstein gave me a great chizuk.
Yeah, Yeshkoach, Chazak u'Baruch. Why are some people against such things?
If I want to judge them favorably, they probably will tell you, why do you have to go to other sources in order like to find what the Torah itself is telling you? You know, I had, when I was very, very young, I will not tell you how many years ago, but when I was young, the rabbi of my shul in Petach Tikva was a person by the name of Binyamin Efrati. He himself was a Baal Teshuvah who went to Ponovitch Yeshiva, and very profound person. A few years later, he became the Mashgiach of Nechalim, the yeshiva high school that I went through. And he told me once, I remember the year, it was in 73, he told me the following story. He wanted to learn psychology. And indeed, he was a very profound person, and I think he could be like a great, great psychologist. And, you know, as obedience yeshiva guy, he went to the Chadon Ish, who lived in Bnei Brak, and he wanted to get his bracha. It was very unusual. Today you have more people who are going to university. I told you about my son himself. He went to yeshivas, but at the end he's now like a professor in the University of Haifa. But 50, 60 years ago, it was unheard that a yeshiva guy in Bnei Brak will go to university, because this was like the secular world. This was completely opposite to the entire atmosphere of yeshiva. He went to the Chadon Ish to ask his advice. And the Chadon Ish was a very smart person. He said, you want to learn psychology? Just learn profoundly and in depth Rashi on Parshat Shavua. He believed that the Rashi in Parshat Shavua contains everything that a psychologist should know. Now, to me, the fact that I remember this story after more than 50 years means something, because to me, it's a very basic story. It tells you about the conflict between the secular world and the religious world. It might be true, by the way, that if you learn in depth Rashi on the Parsha, you will know no less than a great psychologist. But you have to be a very special person in order to figure it out. So I do believe that if you are a regular person, not Chazon Ish, who was one in a generation, maybe one in few generations, you do have to learn it methodically. You have to learn the sources. You have to see many researches that were done in all kinds of fields of psychology. You will not figure it out from the Rashi on Parshat HaShavua. But that's what I want to say. If you learn psychology, when you read Rashi, you will read it differently. You will say, wait a second, what Rashi says here about the difficulties or envy or love, I understand the theory behind it. And it will make Rashi in a very different way than you saw it before it. So you understand where I come from.
Yeah, I get it. I'm getting it.
So with literature, I believe that many people will tell you it's all there, it's all in the Torah, and they might be right. They might be right. But you have to be a very, very special person to figure it out from the Torah and from the Torah only. I'm not this special person, and I do feel that when I read a great piece of literature, I understand the dynamics, the stories of the Torah better. But maybe a great person does not need it. He does not need the Lord of the Ring or the death of Ivan Illich or Julius Caesar. Maybe. So I don't want to be judgmental on anybody. For me, and I believe for many, many people, literature is a great way to understand even the Torah itself.
So learning literature is litzorach your learning. It's to enhance your learning of Torah.
That's at least with my experience,
For you.
absolutely yes.
For you.
Absolutely yes. And it makes it much more real. You know, sometimes I hear, listen, maybe you heard this kind of drashot, but sometimes I go to shul or read the Dvar Torah that the dispute between Moshe Rabbeinu and Paro in Egypt is actually the machloket between the Ramban and the Rashba regarding like a principle in Baba Metzia. Now, it's brilliant. It's brilliant. Sometimes you go, oh, wow, that's how he found it in the words and in the structure. But today, when I'm a little bit older, I say, what kind of Narishkeit is this one? The Torah wants to tell you about the difficulties of someone who has to fight kings and empires and cultures. And eventually you are going to end up to say, okay, what is exactly the machloket? Well, Moshe Rabbeinu came to Paro, but he thought like the Ramban. Paro was a great Talmid Chochem. He thought like the Rashba, and they are like fighting like two yeshiva guys in the hall of the yeshiva. To me, today is Narishkeit, because I think they miss the main story of the Torah. The main story of the Torah is our struggles with our fears, with challenges, with courage to fight even rulers like Paro. And it's all missed. If you don't understand, if you never read Lord of the Ring, if you never Lord, Baal Zvuv, if you never learn this piece of literature, Lord of the Flies, of course, which we touched upon on Korah, you get such an insight to leadership, to struggles of leadership, to what people can do in order to maintain their leadership, sometimes in the worst way. And you want to spend all this richness on, a bizarre machloket between the Ramban and the Rashba about esoteric thing. It doesn't make sense to me. And when I was a yeshiva guy, I loved this kind of brilliance. It's brilliant at the end of the day. But the Torah is so much more than that.
Nicely stated, Rabbi. Very nicely stated. I don't know if you know this, but I've been investigating AI a little bit.
You are fascinating with it. Actually, I want to show you something. Because your fascination, I just downloaded something that I want to share with my teachers. It's a special issue. Maybe our listeners can see it. About generative artificial intelligence in schools.
Yeah.
So, maybe one day I will be as enthusiastic as you about AI. Who knows?
Who knows? Perhaps, but I'm still trying to influence you, and I hope
I don't think that I can exceed your enthusiasm.
All right, fair enough. I have to be better at something. Here's a piece of poem about Moshe Rabbeinu. On Nebo's peak where silence swells, Moses stood, the story tells. His gaze stretched wide to lands unknown, a heart both weary and full grown. The sun dipped low, a golden hue, as he beheld the promises true. Yet in that moment, shadows came, for God's prepared to speak his name. O faithful servant, chosen one, your journey here is nearly done. Through trials fierce, you've led the way, a shepherd's heart, come what may. You faced the wrath, you bore the cries with courage that could touch the skies. In Egypt's grip, you stood so bold, a prophet's spirit pure as gold. You spoke my words, you brought my law in every miracle the world saw. With staff in hand, you parted seas. You brought my people to their knees. But now, dear Moses, take your rest, your legacy forever blessed. The land you sought, it lies ahead. In heart and dreams, you're never dead. Your name shall echo through the years in whispered prayers and joyful tears for every child who hears the tale of how you fought, how love prevailed. So climb this mountain, take your leave. In your own heart, always believe. Your faith shall guide, your spirit soar in every step forevermore. With tender grace, the evening fell as Moses whispered a last farewell. And there upon that sacred ground, the echoes of his life resound. For though he closed his earthly eyes, his spirit joined the endless skies. In every heart, in every prayer, Moses lives on forever there.
Wow, this is really beautiful. Let me ask you a question. When you ask him to write a poem, like you give him the guidelines, the ideas that you want him to speak about, how exactly you do it? I
So
don't
it's
want to take your secrets, obviously, but I just wonder because this is really like a beautiful poem with a very strong message.
so Rabbi, AI is such that you can give it an instruction that says write a poem about Moses passing, about his death, and then it'll spit out a poem that's kind of general, vague, platitudes. Or you could say, write a poem about Moses' death and God's eulogy of Moses. Your eyes never dimmed. Never was there another prophet like Moshe
Uh-huh.
Rabbeinu.
Uh-huh.
And it'll incorporate that into what it spits out.
I see. Do you have to correct it sometimes or?
Yes, AI is known for its mistakes.
Uh-huh. I have to say, this is the first time that I hear a very human idea here from the AI. This start to really even scare me more, but at the same time to admire it more.
Yeah, I hear you. Rabbi, we're coming to the end of the year, and V'zot HaBerachah is reflective of that. One of the things that's incumbent upon us, each and every Jew and each every good person in the world, is to pray for the release of our hostages. And by the same token, also pray for those. You know, there are in excess of 25 million enslaved people in our world today. Many of them are children who are indentured to people. You know, they couldn't repay a debt, so they take their child and their neighbor's child, and they chain them to a sewing machine, and they work for hours and hours a day. As Jews, we have to be empathetic towards the suffering of others. With that, I would like to read a prayer for our hostages who are in Gaza, and it goes as follows. May the one who blessed our ancestors Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, Sarah, Rebekah, Rachel, and Leah, bless, preserve, and protect the captives and missing soldiers of the citizens of Israel and the Israel Defense Forces. May God rescue them from captivity and speedily restore them in peace. In the merit of the prayers of this holy congregation who pray for them, may the Holy One, blessed be God, show them mercy, increase their strength, remove their pain, and send them a recovery of body and spirit. May God return them to the bosom of their family swiftly and soon. And let us all say, Amen.
Amen.
Rabbi, do you have a closing a message to our listeners before we head into Yom Kippur?
Um, Number one, a call for action. maybe it's a good idea. Go to Google, ask for Birkat Habanim, give your children a bracha for this Yom Kippur. It will, I promise everyone, it will give you like such a boost for Yom Kippur. I hope that everyone of our listeners, their families, Am Israel, especially our soldiers, the people who are in the tunnels for more than 365 days, all of them, they need our prayers, our thoughts. Let's all pray that Hashem will seal Chotemas, Chatima Tova, in the Sefer of Chaim, Sefer of Shalom, Sefer of Bracha, to all of us, to Klal Israel, as you say, to the entire world. Because honestly, I do believe that the fight of Israel today is not only for ourselves, it's for the entire world. What kind of values are going to be dominating this world? So Israel is fighting not only our fight, the Jewish people fight, this is maybe the most important fight, but for the entire world. Freedom, happiness, love, caring of one human being to another.
I would also like to add to that on Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur, the Yom HaNorim, these days of awe, that it's incumbent upon us to look at our existence in three different ways. In one way is Ben Adam Lamakom. What is our relationship with God? How has it been in this past year? Have we developed it? Have we strengthened it? Do we understand it more so? Have we questioned it? We have to think about that in these days, and in particular on Yom Kippur. There is another aspect of what we are instructed to really focus on is Ben Adam Lechavero. How were we to our friends? Did we love enough? Did we love enough? Were we good enough? When there was a challenge in front of us to pick somebody up, did we do so? And are we conscious of the fact that we need to become better and stronger in that area to make this world the gem that it has the ability to be? And the final one is very, very interesting. And it's missed sometimes, certainly in the yeshiva world where I grew up, but I think it's catching on. It's Ben Adam La'atzmi. How am I doing with myself? Am I good enough to myself? If I have certain insecurities or certain disparaging things that I say up here in our mind's eye that is always working, can I correct that? Can I embrace myself? We are created in the image of God. Think about that thought. We are created in the image of God. What does that mean? It means there's something beautiful about us. There's something very special about us. Be cognizant of that. So when you head into your prayers on Yom Kippur, do not waste your time. Have an agenda. We work long and hard to make sure we have a financial plan. Have a spiritual plan for Yom Kippur and work on it now. And ask yourself, how did I do in 5,784? And what am I going to do in 5,785 to be a better person, to be a better reflection of being B'Tselem Elohim? What can I do? Love more. Embrace those people who you need to embrace. Ask for an apology if there's someone out there whom you have hurt. And I'll give you a little tip about asking for apologies. When you ask for an apology, when you're finished, don't think to yourself and don't say, and what about you? What about your apology? I've made that mistake. Okay? A little tip in that area. I want you to know that when I did my forest shul service, Rabbi, you know I go into Earl Bales on the high holidays, right?
You told me.
Before I went in, there was a fellow that I had to apologize to, abandon this person. And it's a long story, I'll tell you someday. But it was wrong. I was wrong. And I thought to myself, I cannot go into my forest shul and talk about apologizing and talk about giving forgiveness. You know, there says that the world was created for forgiveness. I can't do it unless I take a step forward and do it myself. So I phoned this fellow, and he was very generous of spirit. He forgave me. And I said, thank you so much for forgiving me. I am so deeply sorry. And now the real work comes, right? But I suggest really strongly that you consider what I'm saying, what the rabbi is saying, and you take it forward with you to become the finest Jew you can be, to find finest human being you can be. Make this world, which is so beautiful in its essence, something more and more special in the coming year. And with that, together, we want to wish you Zeigazin, like they say in Yiddish, a get your Gemar Chatima Tova, make it rock, make it great. And quite frankly, we cannot wait to be together with you once again. Any last words, Rabbi?
Absolutely. As they say it in Hebrew, kol mila, every word. I join in. Beautiful said. And maybe I will call someone to apologize tonight. I should. Thank you.
Chazak uvarech, a get your Gemar Chatima Tova. Have a beautiful holiday and a good fast. And God willing, we shall see you again next week.